Mounting a TV on a plaster and lath wall is a little bit different than mounting a TV on a drywall, but it's doable. Ideally, what you want to do is take a magnet, find the wood studs behind the wall, and then drive a lag bolt through the mount into the wood stud, and that'll be a very strong TV mount. It's definitely advisable to do that if you have an articulating mount. But if you have a flat mount and a light TV, which a lot of the smaller flat screen TVs are pretty light, you can use a toggle bolt or a flip toggle, snap toggle, or pull toggle, whatever you call it. Lots of different brand names for this thing, but it's the same idea. Basically, you'll drill a 1/2-inch hole. It's a lot of drilling, a lot of dust. And then you'll push this through the hole, pull it so that the toggle is in the back of the wall. Push this flange up, and then you'll put the bolt through the mount into that. It'll go through the wall and into the other part on the other side of the wall. You can also use something like the old style toggle bolts, but this style has some advantages. For one, it can hold more weight. Two, it has this plastic flange, so you know it's gonna hold the bolt in the center of the hole, which you don't have with this, and then the mount can move around if you do it like that. But you can use these together. These are some of the tools you'll need. You'll need a drill with a 1/2-inch bit, dust mask, dustpan, a lot of dust. You can use a magnet to try to find where the stud is. One trick is to look where other people have put things. That gives you an indication of where the stud is, and then you knock, and then you can tell it's more hollow here, less hollow right here. But use a magnet. This one is really hard. You can feel it pull it. They're really strong. This might be really thick plaster, because usually we'll just hold it up against the wall. But in my case, I'm using a snap toggle anyway, so that doesn't matter. So what I did was I put up painter's tape. The painter's tape does is it helps to hold the plaster so it doesn't crack and flake off. Doesn't always work, but it's definitely better than nothing. This particular one is a pull toggle. Very heavy duty. This is solid, pretty much solid metal. Very strong. Can hold up to 620 pounds in block, but this is not block. So I'm gonna go with 120 pounds. If your wall is falling apart, you have to remember these things are only as strong as the wall. So if your wall is falling apart, then there's a good chance that the wood lath are rotting, and you wouldn't want to put your TV on that. So you definitely want to look for a stud if your wall is falling apart. Some of these other toggle bolts you can't use in plaster. For example, this particular one here, it has this spiral here that cuts a groove into the drywall hole after you drill the hole. You can't use that in plaster because it won't really, I mean, it might work, but it's designed for drywall, so it easily cuts into the gypsum. Same thing with these things. These things have these little fins, and they do pretty much the same purpose. These are these are called driller toggle. You can see that, but you really can't use that in plaster either because of that. Whereas this one, it does have these tiny little fins, but they're pushing straight in, so you can hammer it in. And then these fins, these tiny little fins can cut into the plaster, whereas these you would have to use a screwdriver and turn it. And you'll need your TV mount. You will not need the lag bolts because you'll be using at least one of these. If you're going to be using these old style 3/16, I think it's 3/16, it needs a 1/2-inch hole is what they say, but if you look those little parts there that are sticking out the side, that actually makes it 9/16, not 1/2. And if you try to put it through a lath, it's just gonna hit. It's never gonna go through. If you were using this in drywall, you can push it right through, no problem. But in lath, it won't work. So you would need a 9/16 bit for that. So you may as well just use these. These are about, they're less than $2 a piece. I don't know how much I paid for this, but when you add up the price there, that's something like $1.30 or $1.40 or something a piece, and it's worth it. And that's it. That's pretty much it. You can use some of these to strengthen it in the four corners. I don't want to put that many holes in it in my wall. I don't need it. It's going to be a very light TV going on it, so I might just put one of these in the bottom. This is, I believe, 5/16 hole, and then then it expands. Whether it's plaster or plaster and lath, it'll just expand in the hole and then strengthen it. Or you could use, if you want a smaller hole, you can use some of these. These will take a 3/8 inch hole. This is the 1/8 toggle bolt, and you can put them in the corners. For example, one benefit of using these is that if the back of it is really bumpy, this is already threaded. If you got the back, and you might have a problem with this being parallel to the surface of the wall, which it needs to be. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Well, despite my best efforts, the tape kept the plaster okay on the top, but then the paint, it's mostly the paint that's peeling off at the bottom. But the way to do this is really easy. You just take this and push it in. When you pull it, it'll be pulled back to the back of the wall, and that's when you'll push this part in here. And you won't put the bolt in until you put it through the mount. And the mount itself will kind of act as a washer to cover over the weaker part of this front of this wall, but that should be okay. Now, ideally, you would hold this up, mount up, and mark on the bottom, and then put another, basically repeat the process if you're going to be putting up a larger TV. For demonstration purposes, I'm only going to put this one in, because I'm really going to put a really small, very light TV up here, and it should be fine. The video cut out. Video turned off, but basically all I did was snap that off. I pushed this all the way up against the wall, and then I snapped that snap part off. This was right here, as you saw, and then you just bring it up and down and it snaps right off. Put a washer on the bolt. Bolt through there. And should find, the bolt will find the toggle on the other side of the wall, and then you tighten it. I'm going to use a level. Level. Okay, for your TV, you would make another 1/2-inch hole and then install the flip toggle in that hole. If you have a really heavy TV, you can use more than 2 if you wanted to. If you wanted to do 4, you could always do that. And you can also use a combination of other kinds of anchors. For my purposes, I just use these little lath screws just to kind of hold it, the bottom part up against the wall. I think most of the weight is going to be pushing down, especially considering this is just a flat mount. It's going to be pushing down right here, and then this toggle bolt will be able to handle that with no problem. And then the rest of it is easy. You just follow instructions, put the bolts in, put this part at the back of your TV, and then you'll take your TV and then put it on the mount, and then tighten these screws, which screw, and then hold it to the bottom so this will never pull out. I'll never be able to take it out that way. And the TV will be up. And that's it. So then you have a TV mount and a plaster wall in between studs. Some bonus tips for hanging other items on a plaster wall. If you're hanging something lighter, like a small mirror or a large picture or something like that, it's still advisable to try to find a stud, but you can use a smaller toggle bolt to be on the safe side if you can't find a stud. If the item really isn't that heavy, you can use a small plastic expansion anchor. So don't use these if the item is going to have a dynamic load like a coat hook or a shelf or something, or a shelf that isn't for just decoration. In those cases, you really want to have a screw and a stud, or at the very least something gripping the back of the plaster wall. For very small or very light items, you can use the same method with the painter's tape as you did with the TV mount. Just drill the hole all the way through, take the tape off, tap in the plastic anchor, and then put your screw in whatever item you're hanging up, or if you're going to put something on the screw, then just screw in the screw into the anchor. If you're hanging something with a wire, I recommend using some kind of hook or something, and not just putting the wire over the screw, which could just fall off. The wire could easily just roll over the screw. If you have a plaster over brick or plaster over concrete, you can watch my concrete TV mount videos and follow those instructions. You know you have a plaster wall to begin with. If you push in a push pin or something sharp and it doesn't go in easily, if at all, with drywall you'll be able to easily push the push pin in. You can tell if your wall is hollow by knocking on it. If it doesn't sound or feel hollow, then you probably have plaster over brick or concrete. If that's the case, then you can still watch my TV mount on concrete video and follow those instructions to get your TV mount up on that wall. That's about it for this video. Thanks for watching and good luck with your plaster wall TV mount.